Hello and welcome to Arcadia. I'm about to start a new D&D campaign with some very special people. However, I always play in my homebrew setting of Arcadia, and this world has something very peculiar as a D&D setting. It is shared between all my groups, meaning that the actions of one group may impact the story of another one, and time is always moving forward, making the world evolve with every player's choice over time. On one hand, this is wonderful. It means that there is this trans-campaign continuity that keeps players invested. Maybe in one campaign they met a young child who 2 campaigns later is a very important hero. Maybe the city they failed to protect in one campaign was turned into a den of evil monsters in the next one. They get to see the history of the world unfold before their eyes, engage with the same people and locations with very different characters, and live through the consequences of not only their previous characters' actions, but also from players of other groups. People who, since they're playing in the same universe, may actually become players at their table, kinda like a multiverse. But the drawback of this is that new players that come into my table don't have as much context. They don't know the lore, they don't know the stakes, they don't recognize any of the characters or locations, and I'm always afraid that they are not enjoying as much. And I love this group so much that I really want them to draw the most enjoyment out of this game as possible. So I decided to start a new series of videos. Welcome to Arcadia World Building Inspiration, where I will be sharing the lore of my world of Arcadia, which I and my players have been developing together for over 10 years. With this, I hope to give you fun and interesting ideas that you can implement in your own worlds, but at the same time, share some lore that new players at my table can use to immerse themselves in the world more quickly. And what a better place to start than the cataclysmic event that shaped the core concept of my world as it is today: the Dark Tide. As twilight falls over the age of men, the convergence of all that is evil will rise. The earth shall shake under that which is not earthly. The false gods shall awaken from their underground slumber. All life shall blur the barrier with death, and all souls shall be abandoned to their fate. Poor those who'll destroy the world, the infernal devoured by its own kin, the regent slayed by vile betrayal, the ancients who dreamed of godhood, the atemporal whose time was ending. The trail of chaos they will blaze will usher 1,000 years of anguish. Chaos will kill order, suffering will be law. Weep for all the dead, weep for all the souls, weep for all Arcadia when the dark tide comes. These doomsday prophecies have been cropping up since forgotten times, but especially in the final years of the Age of Empires, all mentioning a future apocalyptic event named the Dark Tide. In fact, the group that would later be known as the legendary Lost Bastion once fought a swarm of Aleps, driven to madness with knowledge of how exactly this apocalypse should be triggered. The heroes were ultimately unable to prevent the disaster, but when the Dark Tide hit, it wasn't as one single world-ending event, but as a chain of calamities which, while potentially disastrous individually, together created the perfect and deadliest storm. So what happened exactly? It all started when Volsur, the Archdevil, was freed from his hellish prison and invaded the mortal realm. Gathering an immense army of fiends under his banner, he helped the cult of Tiamat release the Dragon Queen as well, only to betray her and devour her as she was escaping hell into the material plane. And thus, Volsur ascended to godhood. At the same time, the Mind Flayer mega-colony of Ragnarjord lifted their fortress into the sky, bent on conquering the northern city of Greyhold for a nautiloid buried deep beneath the city. They were defeated, but the attack left the northern city weak. When Volsur attacked, its walls stood no chance. Maybe the world would have survived, if not for a third player in this catastrophe. Mogos, the Prince of Steel, demigod bastard to the goddess of war and elemental steel, who was imprisoned by her inside a mountain which perpetually repaired itself no matter how much he would try to destroy it. But despite being imprisoned, Mogos took control of Garth, a paladin of his mother and an avatar of the Lost Guardian, after his party of adventurers met a cruel end in the Underdark and he descended into madness and evil. I actually mentioned the story before. Corrupting his soul, he made the paladin raise him an army of armored undead and ravage the land. Now, witnessing the chaos and devastation caused by these 3 otherworldly armies, nations began to lock down and protect their borders instead of uniting against the common threat. This left the small but scientifically advanced democracy of Polydar in a desperate struggle to defend itself. And to do so, in a reckless attempt to harness unlimited power, by artificially tapping into the tapestry of magic, the most brilliant mind of Polydar instead ripped it apart, sending a magical shockwave across the world that rendered magic very unstable. And this, to many scholars, was the moment where the Dark Tide truly happened. Because capitalizing on the magic instability, Volsur slayed Asmodeus, becoming the ruler of Hells, and Mogast launched a campaign of terror and inspired such levels of fear that he was able to ascend to true godhood through adoration. But something else also happened. The Aboleth answered the magical deflagration as a war horn and left their hiding place in the Underdark to resume their long-forgotten war against the gods. Many good gods who would have helped fight the calamity were killed in this conflict. And without the Ancients as an opposing force in the Underdark, demonic portals to the Abyss multiplied, and a wave of demons started invading on an unprecedented scale. This forced the Drow to run to the surface and fight surface dwellers for territory, leading to more death. And at the same time, the Supreme King of the Desert Kingdom of Narmer decided that the only way to survive this cataclysm was by abandoning life itself. And, siphoning the life out of an entire continent, he became the most powerful and evil mummy lord in history. By this time, you are probably thinking, geez, Arcadian, isn't that enough? We get it. The world is ending. However, perhaps the most terrible consequence of the Dark Tide was the corruption. No one knows for sure where it came from. Some suspect the scarring of the Weave of Magic caused it. Some suspect of demonic influence, while others claim it was a plague released by Volsur or Mogast. Regardless of its origin, its consequences are terrible. Corruption moves as a living darkness, a vast, worldwide entity made of fog and smoke which seems to fear only the light. If it touches you, it permeates you and corrupts you with a disease that builds up over time. Initially, it gives you abyssal-like powers, but slowly it also takes over you, until it turns its host into a savage abomination driven mad with an unquenchable thirst and desire to spread chaos and destruction and death. And the corruption currently encompasses the whole world. More than 75% of all wildlife and intelligent life as well was corrupted and now roam the world as these mindless abominations bent on destruction. Nowhere safe. 100 years after the passing of the Dark Tide, there are no nations left on Arcadia. Only faint coalitions of city-states that struggle to survive against the otherworldly armies that hunt their souls, all while desperately trying to keep that dark corruption at bay, trembling in fear that it might catch them. This is a world for survivors, but also a world in dire need of heroes. In all the games that I played until 2022, I have been planting hints and clues that something terrible was about to happen. It all coalesced around a prophecy which I poorly translated from Portuguese in the beginning of the last segment. My goal was to have the players experience the world leading up to that apocalypse, and every single campaign I ran until then was featuring one aspect of the bigger picture leading up to that. Each featured a different bad guy that would cause a different aspect of the Dark Tide, and while it was certainly possible for the players to prevent the apocalypse, that would only happen if all campaigns ended in success, which means they would likely be able to stop many of the bad guys, but ultimately the others would still be able to at least create mini apocalypses in more constrained areas of the world map. In other words, the Dark Tide is not what happens when one single bad guy defeated the heroes in one particular campaign, but rather the consequence of all campaigns of all heroes in the world failing to stop their respective villain almost simultaneously. It's a world where the bad guys won. With this, I wanted to create a slightly different D&D world from the standard cookie-cutter fantasy land we're used to see, and provide a different challenge to the players from what they're used to. A setting that not only defies the stereotype for fantasy RPGs, but also allows the players to experience different goals, dilemmas, puzzles, conflicts, political intrigues, etc. It's set up to provide a darker, heavier, but also deeper and more meaningful roleplay experience. At least that's the idea. At the same time, the stage is now also set for the world to be saved. While the world is hostile and there are foes all around, this also means that whatever direction you shoot will hit an enemy, which can lead to great linear campaigns featuring one of these bad guys as the final villain, but also a lot of great sandbox and or hexcrawl scenarios. Personally, I can't wait to see how my players will slowly reconquer the world and save Arcadia from this new age of chaos. If you liked any of the villains I described, or just the general concept of the great apocalypse caused by the convergence of many smaller apocalypses, be free to steal these ideas and implement them in your game. But be sure to also leave a like in this video to help it reach more people, and let me know that you enjoyed it and that I should make more like this. Until my new campaign begins, I will be back with more Arcadian lore. Thank you for watching, I'm the first Arcadian, and we work in the dark to serve the light.